Okay, we're going to make sure we record this time. Okay, so now we need to talk about nervous tissue. So remember, tissues are made of cells. Nervous tissue is made of two types of cells, which you need to know. The first one is a neuron. This is the electrically excitable cell. This does all the magic. Then there are six glial cells that you need to know. Four in the PNS, four in the CNS, two in the PNS. You need to know where they are and you need to know their functions. So the first thing that we need to do is that we need to find a neuron. All right, let's do this one. This one's a little bit bigger. All right, so a neuron. Neuron is a nerve cell. Remember, cells that we learned are like this. In the last chapter, we learned, though, that a cell can look like this. The cells are built, their structures are going to dictate and allow them to function the way that they do. Muscle cells were set up like fibers, and they had organelles in them. The myofibril, right? The contractile organelle that had all of the myofilaments in it, that had all the sarcomeres that were going to allow that muscle cell to shorten, to contract. What is the function of a neuron? A neuron is going to be receiving information, it's going to be sending information, and it's going to be processing information. So it's going to have organelles that are going to allow it to do this. So it's basically just this thing with some things attached to it. So the normal cell, is called the soma or the neurosoma. That's what we have there. All right, now we need to receive signals. So where are we going to receive signals from? Antennae. These antennae are called dendrites. Now we also have to send signals. So signals are going to get sent down what? This thing called an axon. And then we need to talk to other nerves, muscles, glands, or organs. So how do we do that? We make what is called a synapse. A synapse, so if this is our muscle right here, so let's assume this is a motor neuron. What's going to happen is there is the end axon terminals with the terminal boutons. So here we go. This is the synapse. This is our neuromuscular junction that we learned about in the muscle chapter. So the neuromuscular junction. Remember what got released here? Bonus points if you know this, acetylcholine. So this is going to be a synapse. This is called a neuromuscular junction here because it's obviously there's a muscle. Now you could have an organ like your heart, or you could have a gland, or you could have another neuron that it can synapse with. Now there is a little gap here, and this is called an electrochemical junction. So what's going to happen, our electrochemical synapse, what happens is this doesn't actually touch the nerve, or it doesn't touch the muscle. There's a little air gap in here. So the electrical signal is going to pass, but it has to release neurotransmitters to transmit the neurological message. And then the other organ, gland, or nerve or muscle will have a receptor for that neurotransmitter. This is the basis for a lot of medications that we have in science. I'm like reading and talking at the same time. Okay, so you have all the parts. Now there's a couple more. This part is where all the magic happens. This is called the axon hillock. We're going to talk about this a little later. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's hanging out in here that's really important. This is where action potential is fired. Then there's going to be a covering, an insulation, like the insulation of your phone wire for your phone charger. That is called myelin. This is an unmyelinated axon. Now I have drawn on it. We made it a myelinated axon. All right, cool. So I would be able to just do this, draw a silly picture, and be able to label all the parts for the test. All right, now that brings us to our glial cells. Glial cells, there are, again, like I said, there are going to be 4 in the CNS and 2 in the PNS. The first one that we can talk about is going to be an oligodendrocyte. So this is a hard one to say. You can break it up into 3 syllables, or not 3 syllables, but 3 parts: oligo, dendro, and cyte. Just say it with me. Oligo, dendro, cyte. Cyte means cell. Oligo means few. Dendro means that it's got branches. So it's got a few branches on it. And what it's going to do is it's going to make that myelin sheath around the nerves in, or the neurons in where? In our central nervous system. in our central nervous system. That's the oligodendrocytes. Why do we need that? Well, think about it. If you didn't have an insulation on a wire and you touched it, what would happen? The electrical activity can go faster and it can go farther in a myelinated cell. So that is in the central nervous system. There is an analogous cell in the PNS called a Schwann cell. In the Schwann cell, the Schwann cells are going to myelinate. They're going to myelinate neurons in the peripheral nervous system. That's the difference. So, however, you have to remember that. Un momento, por favor. Sorry, the boss called. So where were we? Okay, so oligodendrocytes and Schwann cells. They make myelin. And remember, the myelin is like insulation. So if it's an oligodendrocyte, where is it? CNS. If it is a Schwann cell, it is the PNS. Okay. So now the next one that we're going to have is going to be the astrocyte. Astro means star, star-shaped cells. That's kind of what they look like under the microscope. These form the blood-brain barrier. So your brain is kind of bougie. It doesn't want to be associated with the rest of the body. It's like the penthouse. You need to have like a little key card to get up to the top of it to get in there. So there's a barrier. There's like a wall that protects it from all the other stuff because the environment is a little different up there. So the astrocytes also help regulate that environment as well. It also provides structural support for that system. So that's what the astrocytes do. Now, the next one, since we are blocked off from the rest of the immune system, the brain has to have its own security. Like the regular police, they don't go up there. It's got its own special cops and own special security detail. And those are the microglial cells. They are the security system of the brain. They're the immune system. They're essentially macrophages. But they also, this is 2025, you can't have just one job. You got to have more than one job. You got to have 2 jobs or 3 jobs. So this microglial cell, they also do cleanup. So they're the cleaning crew at night. When you go to bed at night, they clean up all the debris and everything, and then they help prune some unnecessary neurons that we have. So your body wants to be efficient. It doesn't need to keep all the information that it got for the day. So sometimes it'll start forgetting things and getting rid of the non-important stuff. That's the microglial cells. Now, the last cell is another one that's hard to say. I say it like this: ependymal cells. Ependymal cells. They make cerebrospinal fluid. Your brain is much like a whale. In the fact that whales, if you put them on land, they would collapse under their own weight. The water helps them float around. Well, cerebrospinal fluid, that's one of the jobs that it does, is it helps the brain kind of sit in the brain case. It also cushions it from hitting the front of your head. It also is going to make the environment a little different because the electrolyte concentrations are different than that in the blood. It makes it from your blood, and it's going to make sure that you have CSF. There's a few other things of it, but that's what you need to know. Now, all that's left and that we have is the satellite cells. They are just supporting bodies of the peripheral nervous system. All right, cool. So just to review, neurons, glial cells. Make sure you can draw a neuron, all the parts, all the functions. Make sure you know the 6 glial cells, 4 in the CNS, 2 in the PNS. What do? Oligodendrocyte, they make myelin. Schwann cells also make myelin, but they're in the PNS. Astrocytes, they create the blood-brain barrier. Ependymal cells create CSF. Astrocytes, blood-brain barrier. Satellite cells, supportive structures in the PNS.